All right, so in this video, what I'll be doing is walking you through step by step from the very beginning of judging a halter group all the way towards the end to reasons. All right, what I have here is a previous example of some of the notes and the reasons that we gave in the previous video. In this one, right, I'm gonna start from scratch, okay? I'm looking at a brand new pair of geldings here as a halter class, right? So I'm gonna go step by step through each one of these before I place them and just jot down a couple notes to help me decide my placing, all right? And then I'll break down my top pair, my grands, and so on, all right? So let's get started here. When we take a look at these geldings, right, as a halter class, if you remember those videos, we talked about heart girth, top line versus our bottom line. Ideally, we're looking for the shortest top line. We also talked about the tie-in of the neck right here. We really want that to be high as possible, as well as maintaining a very long, slender neck, okay, or lean neck, as well as muscle, okay? Definition, which horse brings the most power. Another thing that we could look at in this class is a set of hocks and how those are set in proportion to the rear of the rump all the way down, okay? So let's take a look at number one here. So as we look at him from the side profile, one thing I notice is that he's got really good definition out of his crop here, and he has a very short top line. So if you look at proportion here, really we want to see a trapezoid that starts right here at the edge of his crop down towards his gaskin here, okay, and his stifle. All right, so we want to see a decline, not a straight line. All right, same over here with the front of his top line here, all the way down here. Here's his heart girth, right? So that starts, let's see if I can get a position a little better with his head up. So, oops, just missed it. So right here, all right, so we're going to start from here, the edge of his top line here, all the way to his neck. And that, like, right now, what I'm doing is I'm taking a pencil or my finger or whatever I can hold up to this screen, okay? And obviously, like, if you were in the arena, you could do this with a pencil. All right, I'm going to take one part of my pencil, place it here, and then the second one down here. And when I take this length, okay, I'm going to place my finger on my pencil where this ends, and then I'm going to shift it and start it here and down. Okay. And with this heart length, we really like to see that this heart length is about the same length of these forelegs, if not longer. All right. So as I do this, let's see here. Try not to change the difference in distance. Okay? Otherwise, it'll kind of mess up your proportionality. So mine stops right about here. Okay. I'm going to take a mental picture of that before I get too far ahead. Okay, I'm going to start comparing. Number one, I'm going to take a quick look at these other horses over some of those basic things we just talked about. So I'm going to take a visual picture of his top line and his heart girth here, and we're going to switch horses. Okay, here is number two. All right, right off the bat, I noticed that two has a super, super long top line, and he really doesn't have as much definition in his rear here, okay, right around his crop. His neck, let's take a look at his neck tie-in. All right, taking this is kind of in the middle of his shoulder. We usually like to see that towards the top. Okay, notice how one is tied all the way at the top of his shoulder right here. Okay, two is kind of lazy. It's right down in the middle. Ideally, we would have liked to see him all the way up on top here. All right, so for right now, I would place 1 over 2 if it was just these two horses. Let's keep going. Look at those same things again. Here's number 3. Excuse me. And again, I would say 3 has a lower tie-in here. And notice how his is kind of just, I mean, it's just lazy. It's all the way down here and in the middle of his shoulder. Now, I will say it does look like 3 has a shorter top line. Okay, right here is the edge of his crop here going down, and the other edge of his top line here all the way down. All right, let's switch from 3 to 2. Okay, to me, 3 has a much better top line and a little more divisible by 3s. Okay, if I were to take a chunk here, place it over his back end and his back end over the shoulder, okay, I should see a little more, should see a little more proportionality. Okay, let's check the heart girth on these guys too. So 3, yet I'm placing the edge of my pencil here and my thumb where his neck ties in down here, and I'm going to move that down here. Okay, and when I do that, my pencil ends up right about here. Let's do that with 2. Okay, again, here is his neck tie-in. It's kind of lazy. I don't really like him. Here is the edge of it. Here's my thumb, moving it down. Okay. Now he does have a pretty good heart girth. I just don't like his proportionality, and I really don't like his top line. Okay. So as of right now, I would say 1 is better than 2, and then 3 is better than 2. So as of right now, my placing is 1, 3, 2. If I were to set these out. Okay, let's keep moving. Okay, number 4. One thing right off the bat, I don't like how he's running downhill. And what I mean by that is, so notice how high his rear end is here. And then you kind of draw like a sharp diagonal down. Look how much taller his rear legs are than his front legs. Right off the bat, that screams unproportionality to me. He also has a very large top line, or a very long top line. He looks like he has a good neck tie in, but his heart girth might be a little shorter. Let's check here. Okay, so from here to where his neck ties in and down, okay, he ties in a little bit shorter. So I see right about here is where that ends. Again, that would be a little easier to see in person. What I originally said was I said 1, 3, 2, 4. All right. So my top pair, in my opinion, for right now, is going to be 1 and 3. All right. Now I'm going to decide which is my bottom pair out of this, and then I'll kind of figure out as I'm writing reasons who is my middle pair. So if I were to compare just 4 and just 2, let's take a look. Okay. The next thing I'm going to look for, okay, is going to be some muscle. So let's look at muscle between these two. I like his shoulder, the size of the shoulder of 4. He's got really good definition in his gasket here and his stifle. All right. So I can see some good definition there. I don't really like the set of his hock. That could be the exhibitor that's kind of placing those legs there. Let's take a look at 2. Okay. I would say I like the set of the hocks within 2 a little more, although he has a leveler top line here. I would also say, let's see, he doesn't have as much muscle definition as 4 does, right? So you notice how you can see like a really sharp Y or a V right here, okay, in 4, right? He's rippled right there, okay? He's pretty chiseled around his forelegs and his forearm down here. You can even see some definition in his shoulder. Notice how 2, it's just kind of flat. You really don't see much. You see a little bit of definition here. I don't see as much definition in his gasket here. Let's take a look at 4, right? You can just see that right off the bat, all right? So based on muscle alone, I would probably place 4 over 2. Okay, let's look at a different angle just to make sure. Okay, so here's 4's back end. We like to see a wider stifle here. And so this should be really the widest portion of that horse going down. We should also be able to draw a line from the very middle of their rear, okay, all the way straight down. Okay, let's take a look at 2. His rear ends here. Oops. Okay, so a line straight down. And again, this might be the exhibitor that's kind of placing him this way, but I really don't like how flat he is. Notice how his stifle is a little thinner than 4. If we jump back here, it's a little thinner than 4. Notice how it kind of starts, and then if you draw a straight line down right here, you can see a bulge right here in his stifle. Another thing, right? Let's see. I don't really like how he brings his leg in on the inside here. There's not too much of a bow, but I don't like how close his hocks are set to each other. Let's see. Moving on. Again, definition in the shoulder here, just from a different angle. Let's take a look at this, and I can see a little ripple in his stifle here. Take a look at 2 from that angle. He's flat. I really don't see much. You can see a little bit in the front of his shoulder here, but he is flat profiled across the board, right? Let's take one more thing. Let's see, neck length here, okay? Taking a mental picture of this. Moving on to 4. 4's tie-in. I would say 4's tie-in is slightly higher than 2. Notice, so 2 kind of ties in right in the middle of his shoulder right here. And then 4 stays a little higher. Okay, not quite on top of his shoulder, but just about. All right, so I like that. I would also say, let's take a look at some of the masculine features of his his face here. Take a mental picture of his jaw and how large and defined that jaw is. Take a look at 2 from hopefully a better angle. Okay. I kind of like the size that 4 brings. I don't think it's that much of a noticeable thing. Let's see, throat latch, we want to be lean. It's kind of hard to see with his hair here, or his mane. All right. I think I'm going to go with my gut, and I'm going to stick with 4/2. Okay. So right now, let's jump back to notes here. Okay. My placing is going to be 1, 3, 4, and 2 coming in last. Okay. Now, some of the things I noticed. Okay. 4 runs downhill in his profile and has a long top line. Okay. I would also say that 2 is unproportionate and not easily divided in thirds. He also had the least amount of muscle / definition. All right, runs downhill. Let's see, 1 had the shortest top line. Shortest top line, most easily divided into thirds. Let's jump back to 1 here. Okay, definition between 1 and 3. I guess one thing I noticed too is I kind of like the set of the Hawks with 1/3. So if we take a look at, again, I don't know if they have them standing super properly. It doesn't look like it, but if you take a look from the middle of his rear here, draw a line straight down, and notice how close his Hawk comes to this line and how straight it is. I think he's a little too straight. All right, so let's take a look at 1. Okay, we're drawing a line straight down. And he comes apart a little bit, okay, but he's a little more forward, which I like. All right, so let's take a look at his. Okay, so I like his rear end. Notice how wide he is, all right, and how straight. If you were to draw a straight line from here, rear of his rump straight down, he has a really good stance here. So I'm going to write that down. Okay, let's see. Most easily divided into thirds. Great. Let's see. Great set of Hawks. Set of the Hawk. Okay. And widest in his stance. Oh, widest, let's say widest in his stifle and stance. All right, so let's see. Let's see if I can see another angle. Just to add something to, let's look at the shininess of their coat. All right, usually the shinier the coat, the better. All right, we want to look, that's a good sign of health. That horse is healthy, he's got good genetics, and shinier the coat, the better. So take a mental picture of how shiny this guy is. He's looking great. And let's take a look at 3 from that same angle. Okay, he's still kind of shiny. I don't feel like I can see as much of a glare on him as I can. Let's see if I can get all 4 of them in the same picture. Let's see. Okay, I do like how 1 just has a slightly shinier coat. He's looking just a little better. But out of these 4 pictures, you can tell that 1 and 3 are obviously our top pair based off of that. That's something small. I wouldn't dictate the whole class about that, but it's something just easier to add. Okay, let's see. View of his chest. This guy's kind of hard to see. We can zoom in on there. Okay, I can't quite see the bulges within his chest as I can with 1. That doesn't really mean anything unless you can see it in person here. We'll come back to those guys. There's something I can critique on them. Okay, let's see here. Okay, let's say something about 3/4. I could really say that 3/4. 3 is a little more proportionate than 4. Look how long and awkward this horse looks. I don't really like him. And again, he runs downhill with his top line. So let's say number 3 had a flatter or a more level top line and was more balanced. Okay, see if there's anything more noticeable before I move on. Let's see his Hawk. I don't know if that is going to be, let's see, 3 and 4. down a little forward, down. Yep. Okay. So that's another thing I'm just going to add on top of here. So 3 had a more correct set of hocks. Okay, so now we're going to go jump down here. I'm just going to clarify some of these things. My top pair is going to be 1/3, excuse me. Okay, 1/3, because let's say why 1 was the best. And again, I'm going to kind of pair this up with my opening statement. So 1/3, if I can not do that, there we go. Okay, 1/3, he had the shortest top line, the most balance, and the greatest distance between his stifle. Okay, so that's my top pair. That's why I would have placed 1/3. Let's say one good thing about 3. Let's see. So 1, now we're going to jump back here, 1/3. Okay, I think I can say 3 does have a longer neck, although his tie-in is not great. Okay, notice how high his tie-in on 1 is. We jump to 3, and it's just lazy. He's not very lean throughout his throat latch as 1 is, but he does have a longer neck. So we can just give him that. So let's say 3 had a longer neck. I would have liked to see a higher tie in. And middle pair, let's jump to 3 versus 4. Okay, there. All right. Oops. Okay. So 3/4. All right. Again, I think I wrote a couple things. A more level top line. 3 had a more level top line, more balance, and more correct set of hocks. Let's see. Let's say something about 3 here, or excuse me, 4 is the bottom pair of this middle pair. 4, he brings really good, let's say more muscle than 3, although he runs downhill in his side profile. All right, bottom pair, this is going to be 4 versus 2. All right, 4 versus 2. Let's take a look here. Since 2 was really not proportionate, I'm going to say that 3, let's see, 3, oops, up here. Or excuse me, 4. So 4 brought more power and size, as well as being taller. And 2 in this class was the most unbalanced, the weakest in muscle of this class. And let's add 1 more here, just for extra points here. Looking at 2. And I would also say he has kind of a small face. He has a very feminine face. If you take a look at, let's say, the front of 4 here, he has a much more defined jaw, a much larger face. Okay, he looks a little more, he brings just a lot more power with him. Now take a look at 2. He looks kind of like he's got more feminine features throughout his face. So let's say that about him. And the most feminine features, of this class. Okay. Oop, and I forgot to say something good about him. Let's say he's got a little bit of a shinier coat than 4. All right, we're just going to say that. So while 2 did have a healthier shine to his coat, he was the most unbalanced, weakest, and so on. Okay, so here's my notes. All right, now I'm going to run these into a set of reasons. All right, so all right, I'm going to have to add this onto the first part of this video here. It's going to be a little kind of an awkward transition. However, with that being said, where we left off is I just finished my notes. I'll be honest. I'll try to make this as quick as possible. I'm just going to spend this time going over how I'm going to convert these notes into my reasons here on the spot. What I have done additionally is I've taken some vocab right here that I kind of want to mix in just as a backup here if I feel like I'm repeating myself or if I feel like I need a little more depth. You also have this resource. So what I've done is if you click on this Halter vocab tab, I have everything balanced, or excuse me, everything categorized out by balance. Let's see, head, neck, top line, muscle, and so on. All right. If you feel like you're starting to repeat yourself and you just are really struggling to figure out how else to say the things you want to say, this has a bunch of really great sentence sims that you can pull from. All right. Make it your own. Make it something that you can remember on the spot because you may not be able to read it word for word if you're wanting to receive full points. Okay. So let's get started with a opening line. So this this class of geldings was 1, 3, 4, 2. So, ma'am, let's say, sir, I placed this class of geldings 1, 3, 4, 2. Just double checking that. 1, 3, 4, 2. Good. There's my opening statement. Clearly, 1 takes first in this class, being the strongest across his top line, the most modern in his design and appearance, as well as having, let me see if there's one more thing I can pull from here, 1/3 greatest distance between his stifle. Okay, so as well as exhibiting the greatest strength in his rear third. All right, so there's my first opening statements. This kind of runs into my first set of comparisons. Now, if you feel like you need to talk about this is my top pair, I placed 1/3, and then go into comparisons, that's perfectly fine. This is just kind of a method to bleed those two together. So notice that my first section here is really just talking about why 1 is better or the best out of this class, right? Now I'm going to jump into a grant. So my grant for 3, which came in second here, was this. So while 3 had a longer neck, I would have liked to see a higher tie in the neck, right? In the moment, I just jotted this down. This is too repetitive. I would not want to say this one right after the other. So I'm going to make a different observation for his criticism, but I am going to grant him that he had a longer neck. So while I do concede or admit that 3 had the larger neck, or let's say longer neck, of this pair, he was lacking in his proportionality, in his balance. Let's say balance. All right, so there's my first paragraph done. Now I'm going to do my transition. And again, you can find some really good transitions if you hop up into how to improve. I also have transitions here. So if you hit Control F, type in transitions. All right, I realize, I concede, I recognize, let's see, I should have a couple more here. Continuing term for pairs, so furthermore, or in addition, additionally, moreover, and so on. Let's use moreover in my middle pair. I placed 3/4. Okay, 3 Let's see what I had here. 3 had the, oh, excuse me. 3 had the more level top line, balance, and more correct set of hocks. While I do admit, let's change that up a little bit. I'll admit that, okay, I'll admit that 4, let's see what I granted 4 here. So 4 brings a little more muscle. Excuse me. But he runs downhill in his side profile. All right, let's put that. So we'll admit that 4 showed greater strength throughout his profile. He runs downhill, which dropped him in this pairing. Okay, not the best grammar here, but we're going to roll with it for right now. Okay, so I have my grant, and then I have my criticism for my middle pair. I have my comparisons here. Let's do our final one here. So lastly, in my bottom pair, excuse me. Lastly, my bottom pair, I placed 4/2. Okay, let me double check I've got that right. Yep, so 4/2. Why? 4 brought more power and size, as well as being taller. Let me see if there's anything I can bring from here. Okay. 4 was cleaner in his throat latch, as well as being longer legged. And one more thing here, and showing off more power across his profile. Yeah, I am kind of repeating myself a little bit. Not horrible, though. Lastly, my bottom pair, I placed 4/2. 4 was cleaner through his throat latch, as well as being longer legged and showing off more power across his profile. Let's say one thing good about 2 here. Okay, well, 2 did have a healthier shine to his coat. He was the most unbalanced and so on, right? So I'm really just going to copy paste this guy. Was good enough for my notes here. All right, so while 2 did have the healthier shine to his coat, he happened to be the most unbalanced, the weakest in the muscle of this class, and the most feminine in his features. Therefore, I placed this class 1, 3, 4, 2. All right, and there's my reasons. All right, I have every single step that I've showed you here. Now, if I were to give this, I'm just going to enunciate this like I would for a judge. Ideally, if you can, just to save on time, and you're really only going to have about 15 minutes to make your notes, make your placing, make your, you might have a little more time on reasons, but you never know. If you can write your notes just like this, to where it's prepared enough to where you just kind of just wing it on this guy, even better. All right, so let's assume that I'm in front of a judge. I'm going to enunciate and give my reasons confidently as I go through here. Take my time. You really don't have to rush it. Again, the only thing you're really worried about is going too long or over 2 minutes, but don't feel like you got to rush it. Make eye contact and enunciate. All right, so, sir, I place this class of geldings 1, 3, 4, 2. Clearly, 1 takes first in this class, being the strongest across his top line, the most modern in his design and appearance, as well as exhibiting the greatest strength in his rear third. While I do concede that 3 had the longer neck of this pair, he was lacking in his balance. Moreover, in my middle pair, I placed 3/4. 3 had the more level top line, balance, and the more correct set of hocks. I'll admit that 4 showed greater strength throughout his profile. He runs downhill. I'll admit that 4 showed greater strength throughout his profile. However, he runs downhill, which dropped him
in this pairing. Lastly, in my bottom pair, I placed 4 over 2. 4 was cleaner in his throat latch as well as being longer legged and showing off more power across his profile. While 2 did have the healthier shine to his coat, he happened to be the most unbalanced, the weakest in muscle of this class, and the most feminine in his feature. Therefore, I place this class 1, 3, 4, 2. All right, so I hope that just kind of walking you through what you would see, where you would see it, the note process, and then finally tossing that together with our reasons.